Fala galera, aqui é o Enzo e no vídeo de hoje eu fiz uma entrevista com uma doutora em saúde mental e distúrbios alimentares lá da Califórnia e eu coloquei a legenda em português em um vídeo e em inglês em outro vídeo. Nesse vídeo aqui vai estar a legenda em inglês, então se você é um pouquinho mais avançado, eu recomendo assistir esse vídeo aqui. Agora, se o seu inglês ainda não está naquele nível que você vai conseguir entender tudo, o que eu recomendo você fazer vai lá no vídeo que eu fiz, onde a legenda está em português, vou deixar o link aqui embaixo na descrição, e assiste ele primeiro, porque daí você vai estar familiarizado com o conteúdo, com o assunto, e vai ser muito melhor para você estar entendendo. Mas não deixa de vir aqui depois, porque o importante é praticar o inglês. Então, se você assistir lá, vai saber o conteúdo e vir para cá, vai estar muito mais fácil de você entender o que está sendo falado. Antes de começar, se inscreve aqui embaixo se você ainda não é inscrito, dá aquele likezinho, comenta o que você quiser aqui embaixo e manda lá para seus amigos, para todo mundo que você achar que vai ser bom ter um entendimento da língua inglesa melhor e principalmente para quem você acha que vai ser benefício para estar entendendo um pouquinho mais sobre as saúdes mentais. Nesse vídeo, eu e a doutora, nós conversamos um pouco sobre a ansiedade, depressão, ideias de suicídio, algumas maneiras de identificar isso em nós mesmos e nos outros, como se dirigir aos outros, se achamos que as pessoas têm uma dessas tendências. Também comentamos sobre a ideia de que a mulher ela tem essa cobrança dela mesma por conta das redes sociais e da mídia de ter uma perfeição de beleza que muitas vezes é quase impossível, e ficou bem bacana. Então, bora lá. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for giving up a little bit of your time and just, being here and helping out, sharing some of the information that you have. I really appreciate that. And yeah, before we start, I really don't know how to pronounce your name. If you could kind of help me,
Oh, sure.
Because
Sure.
it just kind of.
Castagnini is the last
Okay.
name.
Just a little
Hard
bit
name.
non-Portuguese for me, but yeah. Oh, so before we start, I have some friends who had some problems related what you work with, and they kind of gave me some advice, some questions, but I really want to know your story. I was kind of scrolling down your Instagram and I saw that you have already passed through a lot of things, and then kind of how you got that experience, and then studying more and just combine all that for sharing out to other people. If you could just share a little bit about you, and then also what you do, why do you decide to do what you do, and all that.
Okay. So you're just going to kind of ask me questions and then I'll share a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. And then who's listening? Is it...
So it's not live because people here, not everybody speaks English, so I have to add subtitles, so I gotta do that later.
Okay. Now I got it. I do that too, so...
Yeah, so if you could share a little bit of your your
story.
You
want? Okay, I didn't know if you were ready to start. So yeah. Oh, okay. So when I was in junior high, around 11, the body starts changing a little bit. As girls, and I kind of just felt a little self-conscious, and I wasn't really ready for that. So I started to want to change a little bit, and for me, it just started to get a little bit more out of control, and I started really controlling what I was eating. And, the older I got and I started feeling more self-conscious, it got to the point where now I was over-exercising and really controlling what I was eating. And I just thought at the time I was just dieting and being healthy, and I didn't really realize how out of control I was getting with things. Because I just thought everybody was on a diet. I was reading magazines and looking at things and just thought, yeah, I'm normal, I'm fine. And, as time went on and I started to have different things happen, I started to feel really sick. I started to pass out. I started to have all these different kinds of things happen in my life. And I started to notice, people would ask me to go do things, and now I have to go to the gym, or no, I couldn't go because they weren't going to have the kind of food I wanted, or like my whole life started to become about like what I was eating or how much I was exercising, or I didn't even realize over time like how much it became my entire life, and like how sick I was actually becoming. People would say things like, "Gosh, you look awful," or my hair was awful. It's just you don't see it over time, and so I was grateful. Unfortunately, I ended up like passing out and having a really horrible experience where it was kind of like a wake-up call. And I was in and out of treatment. I thought it was because it wasn't really for my eating disorder. It was more like I was just sad, or I was depressed, or I was having life problems. But therapists would say to me, "Well, why don't we talk about your eating?" And then they'd want me to start like eating and doing things, and I didn't trust them, so I'd flip in and out of treatment. And it took me a really long time to finally get help and want help. And when I finally did, I was grateful. But the whole time, too, I was also on this path. I really knew from a young age I wanted to be in the helping profession. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really think I was ever going to treat eating disorders. That really wasn't on my mind. But after I got licensed to be a psychologist, I just thought I was going to treat, depression, anxiety, something. And I was really aware that people had this joke with therapists, like, "Oh, you go into therapy because you want to like heal yourself, right?" So I really wasn't thinking I'd ever go into treat eating disorders because I had one. But I had this experience once where somebody came in for their first session, and she was talking, and she didn't put down she had an eating disorder, but the more she was talking about things with food and all this other stuff and like the gym, and I started going, "My gosh, she sounds like how I used to be," And I just said, "I bet she's got an eating disorder." I just, so I started to ask her these questions, and I said, "Can I ask you," like I just started to ask her things, and she's like, "My gosh, it's like you're in my head." And we just kind of got each other, and it was just this moment where she just like started crying. It was like this knowing where she didn't have to say anything else, and it was like, I wish I would have had a therapist like me when I went through treatment who just kind of got me, because I never had that, and I think that's why I went through treatment in and out for so long and never really got help early on. It never really stuck. And so it was just this knowing with her. It's like, she just kind of relaxed and was like, I don't have to explain anything. You get it. And so at that point, I sat with myself and said, am I far enough out from my eating disorder where I'm not going to bring my stuff into the room and I can actually do help with people? And so it was really from that point on, I decided, nope, I want to specialize in this. I want to help people because I'd been there. So here I am today. It's been a long time, and I'm specializing in helping people. So
that's awesome. Yeah, it reminded me, like, I remember one day I went to like counseling, and then I was also kind of like really worried about food, but like I wasn't like fat, and I was like almost like I am right now. And then like, and she said like, why don't you just bring your lunch for our next session? And I was like, yeah, like maybe we could do that, because we think we are so much worse than we actually are, and I feel like women, they even have this bigger pressure, because of society. They just put like women with these awesome bodies, and even like Brazilian women, every time I go to the US, because I study in the US, they're like, yo, Brazilian, like they just portray this image of perfect beauty, and then like it just messes everyone's up, because women, they can't be that way. Like even the women who are on the pictures, they are not that way. And then that brings a lot. Like before I contact you by Instagram, I saw like an Instagram story from a friend, and then she just told you like how a nutritionist just kind of like changed her life, just because she was like not eating at all, and then she was just like going through like many of the similar things you just said. And that's why I want to like a professional to talk a little bit about it. But one thing I noticed was like I had like depression, anxiety, like suicidal thoughts when I was younger, and the same way with like eating disorders, you do not know, right? Like you can't tell like, oh yeah, I am depressed. Like sometimes you do not know. You just feel like, yo, I'm weak, or like I should be doing this, I should be working more, I should be more available for stuff. Or even when you're anxious, like you just do not know unless you have someone that tells you. Like how do you think are some ways that we can recognize in ourselves is either being like anxiety, depression, an eating disorder, these things that we cannot see like first person, like sometimes we have friends that tells us, like how are some ways that we can kind of like have a glimpse of that?
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's so hard. And even for myself, it was so hard. It just seems like, your day to day, you're going about things. I think one of the things is to look at, okay, am I isolating from my friends and my family? Am I not engaging in life with people the way I used to? I think right now it's really hard with, especially what's going on with the pandemic and COVID. That's probably one of the harder things to look at, but maybe not even reaching out. So if people are calling you and you're not calling them back, whereas you used to, that's probably number one. So just the isolating part. That's a lot with depression, a lot with eating disorders. They become things where you just kind of isolate and go into yourself. If you start to notice things where maybe you're not functioning the way you used to, so maybe you were really highly functional at school or your job, and then you're just starting to like call in sick, or your grades are slipping, where you're just not kind of doing things the same way you used to. That's probably a big one. If you're doing things like, I call them escaping, so like sleeping a lot more, you're just wanting to like bow out of life. That's another big one too. Any kind of irritable moods where you're just kind of snapping at people, and just like, especially with eating disorders, if you're not eating enough, you can get really grouchy and really snappy. So that's another big one as well. Sometimes with eating disorders too, if the grouchiness can go with, if people don't work out enough, or they don't get to the gym, they can get really in a bad mood, because they just, I don't know if you had an eating disorder, if you found like there was any behaviors you couldn't engage in, like working out, or you couldn't get like your specific meals in, or you couldn't get like to the point where you could weigh yourself, or different things where you felt like, I have to do this today, and then you get really grouchy and irritable with other people or yourself. So just noticing like this compulsion, like I have to do this, and if you don't get those things in, you just moody, really mad.
That's awesome. Like I remember I used to be an RA at college, and then we would have like a training where they would teach us like how to recognize people who either wanted to kill themselves or to kill other people. And then like this is one of the things I want to ask you, like how do we recognize in like our friends, for example, like how we recognize like in our friends if they had some of these problems, and like what should we do? Like should we talk with them? Like should we say like try to understand their situations, or should we just like send them to a professional? Should we do both? Should we try to just like hang out? This is like dudes always say like, oh, you're stressed, let's go and hang out, let's just play video games or whatever. Like what's the procedure?
Well, it's hard. So like when you're talking about suicide, for instance, sometimes there's no signs or symptoms, and I think that's the hardest part. Is oftentimes I'll hear from people like, wow, I didn't see it coming, or it doesn't make any sense, they can't point to something, because a lot of times people hold things in. And so for anybody out there who's maybe had a person in their life who has unfortunately committed suicide, there can be like this feeling of like, oh, I missed something, but oftentimes there's nothing to miss. That's the unfortunate part. Sometimes what people will do is they'll start giving things away. Here, things that are really prized possessions of theirs that they have, they'll give away. So that could be maybe one thing. But again, like I said, maybe it's more of like isolating, or just a huge shift in their functioning. So like I said, somebody who maybe got straight A's, all of a sudden they're like failing, or they're just not going to class. I mean, there's just like a drastic shift or change in the way they used to function.
Mm-hmm. And what about right now? Because like, I was kind of researching about it, and throughout this pandemic process, I think this was in Brazil, but like I think depression kind of like double and anxiety increased like 80%. But we do not have much to do, like we do not have the same freedom we used to have. Like, what can we do now? Like, should we do not obey the government? I'm playing. But like, she was like, my life is more important. No, I'm just playing. But like, what should we do? Because it's kind of hard, like a FaceTime call is not the same as an in-person call.
Right.
You cannot do the same activities you used to be. And your job, you may really have lost your job because of the government problems and economy is bad. Like it's bringing a ton of pressure.
Well, so the more out of control we feel, the more we're prone to depression. And so right now, if you think about what's going on, there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know when the pandemic's going to be over. We don't, like, for example, if somebody lost their job, that's a lot of financial instability and kind of worries, like, oh my gosh, am I going to be financially stable? Then there's the fear of, oh my gosh, am I going to get this illness? If I go out and do something, that's scary. Is people in my life going to get it? I mean, it's just a lot of uncertainty. And so it's like, if you think about it, it's like, what am I in control of? I can't go out and socialize. I can't travel. I can't do all these things I want to do. It's like, what are you actually in control of? And so when people start to think about that, that brings up a lot of anxiety as well, right? And safety and secure. We need to feel safe and secure. And when you don't, right, so you're anxious and then you're thinking, I'm not in control of this and this and this and this and this, and that breeds depression. And so you're right, there's heightened levels of depression and anxiety going on right now. And the longer this is going on, it's just getting worse. And so that's why there's all this increase in depression and anxiety right now.
And right now, what do you think are some good coping mechanisms for those people who are like struggling the most with this?
So I think it is just kind of sitting back and saying, okay, so all these, instead of focusing on, okay, what's not in my control? Because I think people can do that. Okay, I can't travel. I can't go socialize with all my friends. I can't go to the bars. I can't, it can be really easy to just ruminate on all those things. Focusing more on, okay, what actually is in my control. So that is maybe just more of a mind shift and saying, okay, yeah, you can focus all day long on all these things you can't do and feel really trapped. But there's nothing you can do. It's almost like this thing we call radical acceptance. It's like you have to accept this is the way it is, but what actually is in your control? There are some things you can do. So you can be safe about it, right? You can wear a mask and you can go out and be 6 feet apart from people out in the open air. You can socialize, right? You can go to a park and like see somebody in person. Just be safe about it, right? You can do that. You're not just restricted to Zoom calls. So, there's some things you can't control, but if you, like I said, if you just focus on that, that's going to be a problem. But that's so easy to do.
Yeah. And what role does the gratitude plays part in it? Not only in this specific, but like an overall, because there's not much to look. So if you can kind of like try to see the half full glass of water, does it kind of helps or not really? Or is it only an illusion?
No, I think gratitude, whether it's a pandemic or not, I think, I personally think it's great to start the day with writing down 3 things you're grateful for, because that can set the agenda for the day or your mindset for the day, and just kind of reminding yourself of those things. And so reminding yourself, look, you don't have COVID right now, right? Or, who is in your life that you can be grateful for? Or if you do have a job, okay, I'm grateful I have a job. Maybe it's not what you're wanting. Maybe you really did like going into the office, but you still have one. Or, hey, you know what, I have more time with my family. Or I don't have a commute right now. I'm not so stressed out. Or maybe you have more time to do other things. Or try to find something where it's like, okay, I can be grateful for this right now. And I think that does really help. There are things you can be grateful for. And it's not saying like, oh, I'm discounting all these other things that aren't great, but it is a mind shift.
Nice. I was also studying a little bit of like how social media has impacted. And it seemed like, I don't know if it's because the world overall changed or because social media actually had a direct impact, but like even on mental health, it seems that the degrees got pretty worse. Like I do not know if it's because people start to compare their lives with others, or because they start to focus too much on technology. Do you have some understanding more in depth about that?
So, are you, like, from what you saw, was it more negatives,
Yeah, like
like
depression.
messages?
Yeah, like depression, anxiety. They had kind of like increased it with social media, which is kind of a little bit odd because at a certain point, like people can talk with each other more frequently.
Well, I think what happens with social media is, the, when, like, for Facebook, for instance, right? Um, if you're if somebody's looking on Facebook and they're comparing themselves to somebody else's life, and people on Facebook, what do they post? They post like their shiny pictures, their shiny moments, right? Like the great pictures.
Yeah.
And now too, with all these, like, I'm very well aware of all these like apps where you can filter yourself and look perfect, right? So like, imagine you're like a young girl and you're on Facebook, or I don't know, whatever. You're on social media and all you see is your friends or other people filtered images, right? And they look perfect, right? So you're looking at this going, oh my God, everyone looks perfect. Everyone looks amazing. Everyone looks
Like
right?
I suck.
Person after person after person after person. Even if the person looking at that kind of has this awareness, like, that's fake, that's filtered, that's altered, that's whatever, hour after hour after hour, all they're seeing is perfect, perfect, perfect. And they go look in the mirror themselves and they're thinking, I don't look like that. Right? So what are they comparing themselves to? Hour after hours is like unrealistic, perfect image, and then looking at themselves going, that's gotta really impact them, right? That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's just, if it's not even that, it's other people looking at like, oh, happy families, or this person is like taking it upon themselves during this pandemic to like build this amazing business and do this and like conquer the world, and I'm sitting at home going, oh my gosh, I lost my job, like I suck. Like, why aren't I taking advantage of this? Like, what am I doing? And so I think people just post what they want to post to portray things, and so when people are just kind of constantly comparing themselves to all this stuff, maybe it's real, maybe it's not, who knows, it's really hard to sit back and go, wow, what am I doing?
Yeah, and people may start living for the others, like they may start to doing things to kind of like impress the others and not only things that makes them happy. I think that's really like, oh my God. Yeah, I'm almost finishing up. I got I think two more questions here. Yeah, I think that was it actually. All my friends had like sent me this couple questions, and then I was passing by. I made a couple that I found was interesting. But overall, just I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for giving up a little bit. And I know it's 1:30 right now, 1:50ish. It's like
Yeah,
5:50 here, almost like end of the day.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah.
Nice. No, thanks. It's great to meet you. I know we've just done some messaging, so it's nice to see you in person. And
It's kind of less weird, right? Like just typing and not knowing someone.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well,
All
if you
right.
need anything else, let me know. So.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll send you the video later. When I post it, I'll send you the link.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.